Hello and welcome to this edition of the Coaches Corner. Today we have an update. This is Curry College's 2026 update. Curry College is located in Milton, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston. So you've got small town charm and big city opportunities all wrapped up in one with Curry College. The college has about 3,000 students across its undergraduate, graduate, and continuing education programs. Curry College is particularly strong in fields such as business, communication, nursing, criminal justice, and education. And it is known for the Curry Commitment, which is a career readiness and job guarantee program that we'll talk a little bit more about later on. Athletically, the men's rugby team competes at Curry in the NCR Division III. The team is coached by Benjamin Torruella and focuses on competitive regional play and prioritizes player development for both their 15s program that runs in the fall and their sevens program that runs in the spring. And with that, I would like to welcome Coach Torruella to the Coaches Corner.
Thank you for having me back. It's nice to be here to give some updates.
It is great to have you. Now, not everyone has seen your earlier interview, so could you start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you made your way to Curry?
Absolutely. So I was born in sunny San Juan, Puerto Rico. When I was younger, family moved to South Florida, where I grew up playing ice hockey, which isn't a typical sport of the Sunshine State. Um, American football was huge there. Youth rugby was not really in any sort of foundation when I was growing up. I moved up to Boston when I was 18 to chase my dream of college hockey. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And ended up coming to Curry. I had already known about the school through hockey and toured it. Um, which is where I picked up rugby. I thought that was the next best thing for my body, and really haven't looked back since. Playing at Curry, our first 2 years was really rebuilding years. My last three, I was at Curry for a fifth year. Were pretty strong years. I guess my fourth year, we went undefeated and lost in the league finals to Siena College, who is now Division 1A. And then my fifth year, I guess my super senior year, we had lost to Merrimack College in the semifinals. So we went out on a strong note. Then COVID hit, which really affected all of collegiate rugby, particularly the small colleges. Um, I took into playing some senior rugby after with the Boston Irish Wolfhounds, but after my first weekend of senior league and having to go to work on Monday, I wasn't exactly sure if playing was in my future anymore. Um, so I switched over to refereeing, which gave me a whole different perspective of the game. You're literally in the middle of everything and the perpetual bad guy, right? So you get to learn how to deal with opinions and people and grow a pretty thick skin. A coaching opportunity opened up back at Curry. Um, I pretty much just thought, might as well seize the moment, bring the program back to its roots. We've spent the last 2 years painfully rebuilding. I say painfully because we're trying to do it in a sustainable way, something that keeps people wanting to come back to the program, um, which so far has had a good ROI. And we're continuing to build to the future. And, going forward, we have our women's program building back up as well, which is super exciting. There's been a lot of recent movement around that. So I'm really excited for the future and to see where Curry as a school and the rugby program are headed.
When we were talking earlier, you were saying how the fall was struggle with numbers, but you managed to play every game. And I think that one of the things that recruits are always concerned about is, am I going to get to play? And certainly that seems to be a priority at Curry and part of your culture. Can you tell me a bit about your rugby program and that culture that you're trying to build?
Absolutely, and proudly. The rugby culture at Curry is really built around love for each other. As skilled as you can be, as hard-nosed as you can be, if you're not um, emotionally invested in your team and the program, you're not going to fight for it. And that's what we do. That's our, kind of our team motto. What happens when you make contact? You keep fighting forward. And that's the mentality we're building people into, is having that mentality of nothing can stop me. I'm going to keep trudging forward. And that's more of a life lesson. A lot of our students, um, they come from a variety of backgrounds, some a little smoother than others, so they have to face all sorts of adversity in life. I think if you can learn these lessons throughout a simple game like rugby, it's a lot easier to translate that to real life execution. So it's little things like texting your coach if you're going to be late to practice, showing up for the bus on time, setting your alarm at the right hour so you don't miss a plane, which happens. I've been a part of it. It's scary. But these are all things that keep the players coming back. And, as much as it is a fighting mentality, it's also accountability. Um, and I think that's really helped us elevate our numbers for the spring. We were at about 16, 17 all in for the fall. And right now we're sitting at about 24 healthy. We have a few injured folks. And then we have about five ladies that have been training with us regularly. So it's been great to see that community build. And people are starting to radiate to the program.
So you play 15s in the fall, and now that we're in the spring semester, it's all about sevens. And you seem to constantly have a sevens tournament going on. So I think it's probably really helpful that you've got a lot of people that are interested in playing sevens in the spring. You had a tournament that you hosted last weekend. You've got another one coming up. Can you talk a little bit about those tournaments and your role as host and what this whole sevens kind of campaign is like? Because there is a lot of travel and there's a lot, it's very different than 15s in the fall.
Absolutely. Usually, if you're traveling for fall 15s, it's a day trip. So you're there and back. Um, Being the only chaperone for 22 college students on a weekend trip to Pittsburgh it teaches you something about yourself. I'll say that. Really tests your patience, but it's all in great fun. A lot of it is community wise. It's keeping people involved. If the team, it's not necessarily doing exciting things, but the team is doing memory making activities. Whatever they were giggling about the whole time in Pittsburgh, they're going to remember 10 years down the line, right? Sevens is another way for us to play incredibly competitive rugby. For fall 15s, you're generally stuck in your region, which is New England. You don't really get to play out of region teams until you get to the a round of eight, if I'm not mistaken, because even the Northeast region is um, New England and New York. So some of those teams you might see on a social weekend or if you're playing a friendly. So the spring gives a great opportunity to play some other clubs. For example, we went to the Frostbite tournament in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the end of February. We played in the men's premier division. One for the travel of it, the tournament, but two, to play real high level competition. Um, as we're trying to grow the program, it helps to see what it takes to be a high level team and to play against them to grow your program in that way. So, for example, we played Rio Grande and Kutztown, um, which, my guys fought valiantly. At a certain point, there's really not much you can do. um, if you're not at that level, right? Some of those kids we're going to see on national rosters and pro rosters one day. So it's great to have that under our belt competition wise. 2 weeks later, we went to Pittsburgh for the Allegheny Rugby Union's automatic qualifier. Played some real great teams out there. Last spring, we played Christendom quite a few times on the road, and they beat us pretty handedly. This past tournament, we lost to them on conversions. So seeing that growth within a match was great. In fact, we went 2-4 that weekend, but I really it's struggling because the last two games we lost on knock-ons and the in-goal area. So it could have easily been 4-2, but that's the fun of sevens. What one little play can really change the whole weekend. But it's about keeping the guys busy. Um, Everybody plays every weekend. That's a big point for us. If kids are just sitting on the sidelines for a whole season, that's not going to keep them interested in staying with rugby. Hosting for us is also a great way to show off our campus. Um, of all the teams we hosted this weekend, it was nice to get a message from most of them saying, "Ah, we finally get to play on a grass pitch." So, it's also a little bit of selfishness in that sense that we have one of the only grass pitches in the area for college that gets used regularly. So we might as well use it. And being right outside the city, um, you know, here in New England, everybody knows somebody in Boston. So it's a great way even for outside teams to connect with their own community. And, it's kind of silly to think about it that way, but rugby really is a community game. And, we had people that had never seen Curry come by campus this weekend and say what a beautiful campus it was. So, it's that little bit of communication channel that really keeps us driving.
That's great. Now sevens is thought of as a skinny fast guy sport. So what do your big
Excuse
guys
me.
do in the spring if the skinny fast guys are playing sevens?
They play as well. Sevens is you can model your play around your personnel, right? So I tell my bigger guys you might go in for 3 or 4 minutes only in a game, but you're gonna give me 100% for those 3 or 4 minutes, and someone who knows rugby as much as you do, if you give a prop more than 30 meters that they have to run, uh, they might not last 3 or 4 minutes anyway, right? So I give them that time limit for a set of encouragement. If they're still doing well, I see no reason to take them off. They all train together, so they all do the same fitness, the same cardio. It's also a challenge to my players that you know, when we played Kutztown, for example, they had multiple players that were 6'2", 6'3", 230 pounds playing sevens, and they're just mobile. And it's really teaching my guys, you know, become that mobile. And then you're a pretty intimidating person to play. I certainly would double consider tackling certain people, right?
Yeah.
So it's we keep them involved. I had mentioned we have the multiple sides for sevens. So, our I don't like to call them B side. Not that I think it sounds degrading, but it's less sometimes it keeps people less involved. Um, but our second group typically that might be majority forwards. And there's something interesting about running crash ball continuously in sevens that if it's all forwards, it works because none of them stray too far from each other. So it's also a little the aspect of letting them have some fun. We consider our top team mm, the more competitive side in the way of if we're at an automatic qualifier, we can only roster 15 for the weekend. It's going to be those guys. Um, but we still find tournaments to play for the other group. So other benefit of being where we are is there's so much rugby that, our quote unquote premier side could go to an automatic qualifier, and then our social side could still have a 5 game tournament locally and, still be in as much aches and pains on Sunday as the other
And
group.
channel
So
their inner Reese Carries as much as they like.
yeah, so, you'd be surprised how often a prop is like, Coach, I was kicking a grubber in warm-ups. Can I try it in a game? And I'm like, you understand that was warm-ups, right? Nobody was running at you. So yeah, it definitely gives them their time to shine.
Great. Um, so if we back up for a second, we've talked a bit about your fall season, we've talked a bit about your spring season. If we look at it week to week, what does a typical rugby week look like for your players? When do they show up at school to start the year? What is training like, lifting, playing? What is that all? How does that play out?
So for the fall, um, it's a little different because the weather's warmer. You can get outside quicker. So the players come back about 10 days prior to everybody else moving in. Um, so within those 10 days, we'll do basically 3 days of training. So we'll have a morning session, an afternoon lift, and then an evening session. We'll do that 5 days a week. So it's really getting a full preseason circuit in. Within those 2 weeks, we'll also mix in a scrimmage or two, really get the guys in playing shape before the season even starts. As the season goes along, we would have 3 trainings per week, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. The team lifts twice a week. Mondays is film review. And then if we have a match on the weekend, Friday is walkthrough. Um, if not, Friday will be off, but we still have the guys do something rugby related over the weekend. So whether it's play touch as a group, go to the local senior men's game to watch. We have a very good relationship with some of our local men's clubs. So, this past weekend, they were the rowdy bunch on our sidelines for the tournament, and it's nice to see them interact on a first name basis with each other, and even some of them nicknames. So we like to keep that culture built throughout the fall. That if we're not playing, go support the guys who are, type of deal. And that even extends to if we have an off weekend. And a senior club has a B-side match and they need a few extra bodies, we'll get the guys out there for a run. Even men's B-side, you can still learn a lot from someone who played their rugby in the 80s and 90s. Even though it might not be exactly legal, most of the stuff they did, but you can still learn quite a bit from it.
Um, You were telling me earlier that there's been a bit of a surge of interest in rugby, both from women and from men, in the applications that are coming in for the next school year. Do you have international players on your team? Do you expect to have international players? And what's the role that they play on your team?
Yeah, so yeah, we've had quite a bit more interest. For the men's, it's been about, I want to say in the neighborhood of 65 to 70 applicants, rugby specific, which has been great. Um, of course, that doesn't mean all of them are coming to Curry, and every time I see an application, I'm not in uh their ear for, immediately saying, "Oh, I saw you applied," type of thing. I try to show them reasons why Curry's the best choice for them, not force it into their head. Um, so I think that type of recruiting has started to filter through the community channels, just about the ideas of what we're building, the pathways we're headed down, things like that. So my own presence from reffing, and I also coach locally at Milton High School. Um, you know, I, in all fairness, I'm not sitting there telling all the Milton kids apply to Curry. I like to just be a resource to them of schools to apply. So even if it's questions at other schools, it's nice to be in both um, ecosystems to really understand what players are looking for. So it even helps me as a coach to know what high school kids are looking for. As far as international students, we do have a couple on the team. Um, it's fair to note they are international students that came to Curry and started playing rugby, not necessarily international rugby players. It's helped them find their community here at Curry. It's especially at small schools where Greek life is not a thing. Your sport team can kind of be that group for you. And even more so, sport clubs can kind of be that group because they're even more, you choose to be there. You're not going there specifically. Now that is changing a little bit with some of the recruits we have coming. They are coming to Curry for rugby and for Curry, but I do always try to frame it that make sure you're making a choice that if rugby was taken away, you would still enjoy Curry. Now for international players, I was lucky enough to play with an Englishman by the name of Oliver Johnson when I was at Curry, from Bloxham School, and he was a phenomenal player. So, it always helps. It's great. But we do have some incredible domestic talent here in the US that international players that I speak with or talk to about Curry, I remind them that they still have to fight for their spot. Even somebody who didn't grow up playing rugby, wrestlers are some of the best transfer athletes I have found from outside rugby to start playing the sport. And as long as they're willing to put in the effort, they're going to get an equal chance back from me as coach. And that's not always a starting 15. Um, that might be being the B-side captain for a week or two, and then really actually learning where to play. And then once you understand that, you morph right into the first 15 type of deal. So it's about building a culture of accountability, and I think young kids nowadays enjoy that more than they think.
You mentioned earlier that people come to Curry for rugby and they stay for the community.
Yeah, 100%. It's like I had mentioned, we're starting to become a group that people gravitate towards. Um, eh, it's a very, very different circumstance, but I've the way I like to phrase it to my team is we operate similarly to the French Foreign Legion's policy that French by spilt blood. If you come out and you bleed with us, you're one of us, right? So it's there's not too many sports where the bond is forged in blood and bone, quite like rugby.
For sure. Why do you think that someone should choose Curry College over other colleges and other rugby teams?
So from a college perspective, it's especially in the atmosphere we're in right now with higher education, a lot of schools are restricting, unfortunately closing down, having to transfer degree programs to other schools. Um, Actually, just within the last month, Curry announced it's acquiring another college here in the Boston area, La College. That was the longest running nursing program for undergraduates here in Boston. So that's, another set of students that the school is absorbing. So It's nice to see the school growing. We're adding more programs. The school has just finished renovating a data science lab, a new pub on campus. We have a whole host of new undergrad and graduate degree programs being offered. So, from the academic perspective, Curry's on the move. Curry's growing. Uh, from a location perspective, you get the best of both worlds, to be honest. Boston's one of those cities that, you can say you're 45 minutes outside of the city, but that's not considering traffic or anything like that. Where if you've been to Boston, traffic in this area is some of the worst in the country. So, a 45-minute ride really ends up taking you an hour, hour and a half. It, geographically, technically, we're right across the street from Boston, the city limits, but into downtown, it's really only 15 minutes via Uber. There's public transit, so whether it's trains, subway, bus systems, Logan Airport's only 20 minutes away, so talk about gateway airports flying to the UK. It's really only a 6 hour flight. So, a st student athlete on a long weekend, it's really not without question to be able to go home. Transit wise, again, there's also trains to New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. It's really an area where you can get everywhere else pretty easily. And then I guess it also goes location wise, where we're located in the Blue Hills. If people are outdoor activists and like to be outdoors, it's a nature preserve, which is what we're near. There's tons of hiking. There's even a ski slope, which is right down the street. Some of my players work on the ski patrol. There's student discounts there, so it's really a great place to be a part of everything. Um, but also to be able to go home to a quiet campus at night, and enjoy that aspect because there's really nothing like a hectic day in the city, and then going back to a cozy, quiet neighborhood. So, I would say that sums up to our location really being our best point, but it's, so many things fall under that, whether it's outdoor activities, career options nearby. You know, I was looking at our internship board that was posted at Curry, and I was seeing internships that were paying 35, 30, $25 an hour for summer jobs, where I was thinking like, wow, like that's some people's salaries, and for a summer intern, that's not a bad gig to take. So, there's options to stay on campus over the summer at Curry. So it's really a great spot to get involved with your next phase of life.
One of the things that I think is a differentiator for Curry College is the Curry commitment. Can you talk about that job guarantee program and what it entails and what the benefits are?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that's one of the biggest things that sets Curry apart. Um, in short, it's a job guarantee program. I know that's one of those things that sounds too good to be true, but Curry has set up and designed a whole career services office where their job is to get you a job. So this also applies to domestic and international students. So, again, Boston being the city that it is, if you're a student from London, from Paris, from Dublin, wherever, Barcelona, there's a very good chance that a company that has an office in Boston is going to have an office back in your home country. So, if working back home is something you wanted to do, the Career Services Office could help with getting an internship there to turn into a full-time job and really starting that networking process way back in your undergrad. Additionally, it's more for domestic students because it comes down to federal student loans. But if you're unable to find employment within 12 months, the school pays your federal loan up to 12 months after graduation. So, it's putting the pressure back on the school to make sure that the student is prepared after college. And, it's Curry's not a state school, right? So it's tuition is typically higher than state schools. But this is guaranteeing a return on your investment because the school is saying, this is our commitment to you. Of course, so long as you meet these criteria, GPA, internship things, it puts the responsibility back in the hands of the people that are going to be affected by it. So, and that's going to be the student and the school. So it encourages students to really think about what they're doing. Because this isn't just a program that just gets you a job, right? And I'm not discrediting retail or anything in that sense, but this is for jobs that are asking for a college degree, which is where the ROI is that piece of paper that you're working so hard for.
Sure. Thank you so much for explaining that. You touched on cost, and obviously, the cost of college is always in the news of how expensive it is to go to university these days. Could you talk a little bit about the scholarship opportunities and how that plays out both for domestics and for internationals at Curry College?
Yeah. So Curry as a school is NCAA D3, which means across the board, the athletic scholarships cannot be offered. Um, and that's, just the protocol, I guess is the right way to put it. But Curry is incredibly generous with its merit-based scholarships and need-based aid. So that's things like your GPA, extracurricular activities, income. Um, there's quite a few variables that fall under that umbrella. Um, I would say Curry is very generous. I would say around net cost, it's probably in the neighborhood of 28 to 32 on average. And that's average. There's unique circumstances where, someone may pay vastly less. But the school has a variety of resources to bring that down. And it's worth noting that that's on the level of grants and scholarships, right? So, of course, there's always federal student loans and things like that, but the school does an incredible job of working with students to bring that out-of-pocket cost as low as possible. And it is worth noting too, especially for students that live on campus, there's some pretty creative ways to really bring down the cost. Um, One of those is becoming an RA on campus, so a resident assistant. Um, Basically, they manage students in a dormitory. That brings down the housing room and board costs, I think another 70%. So it really knocks off a huge chunk of value. So of cost rather, makes it become value. So, there's yeah, I don't know. I could talk about a whole list of ways, but it's the school does a great effort to help students bring costs down.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I saw recently that Curry is becoming the training home for one of the professional women's rugby teams. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, that is something we're super excited about. So the Boston Banshees are the women's pro team here in Boston. Um, and yeah, just as you mentioned, they're going to be using Curry as the training facility for their preseason this year. And looking to have that become like their full-time facility. Curry this summer is having the turf renovated on the main football field, so we're a little unsure of the scheduling for the summer. But from March through June, they're going to be training at Curry, using our on-campus facilities, and we're really one, for the growth of rugby, but two, the growth of the women's program. We're really excited to have them on campus, have that presence, and to really expand on it. We're trying to make Curry a place where, rugby happens, and a lot of that has to do with our location. Um, you know, we're the town next door to the Free Jacks, Mystic River, the Wolfhounds, Boston Rugby Club. I mean, there's 15 rugby clubs within a
Serious
30
rugby
minute
in the neighborhood.
radius. Yeah, and it's to be a focal point of that is huge. And with the rise of women's rugby as a sport in general, we're really excited to start providing a place for women to come develop, become better players. I've spoken with some international students that the recent news is, now more of a reason to come because some of the time they're going to be sharing, they're going to be out on the field at the same time we are. So the opportunity to, be, I don't want to say accidentally seen, but there's always that saying, if you never know who's watching, the fact that professional coaches will have eyes on really separates the opportunity level from other schools.
That's right. It's all good stuff and all very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing your program with us today and all of these very cool updates to it. And good luck with the rest of the seven season. And hopefully we'll have you back after the fall season or during the fall season, and we'll get an update and see where we stand at that point.
Absolutely. It's always good to chat, but it's always good to chat about our team. We have a lot going on and not slowing down anytime soon. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
thank you.